It never starts as a war. It starts as something smaller, something easier to miss. A glance that lingers too long. A subtle pause before your name is mentioned. A joke told a bit too loudly. The kind of laughter that doesn't include you. And you tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself it's not worth reacting to. You tell yourself that if you just stay calm, if you stay nice, they'll stop. But they don't. Because disrespect ignored is permission granted. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. In a world where power was everything and reputation was currency, he knew one truth. The first sign of disrespect is not a mistake. It's a signal. The test. And how you respond defines everything that follows. Not just for the one who disrespected you, but for everyone who saw it, everyone who heard about it, and everyone who's silently waiting to see what kind of person you really are. This is not about ego. It's about positioning. Because in social hierarchies, whether at court, in business, or behind a screen, the person who can be disrespected without consequence becomes the person others disrespect by default. And Machiavelli would warn you, once that position is set, reclaiming your dignity will cost twice the effort and deliver half the results. So you don't wait. You don't flinch. You don't explode. You move the Machiavellian way, silently, precisely, and with total control. The first law is this: never respond with emotion. The one who reacts loses. Because in the game of power, emotions are a signal of instability. They show others where you can be manipulated. And the moment you explode, over-explain, or defend yourself, you've already surrendered the frame. Instead, you go still. Stillness is not passivity. It's pressure. It's the kind of silence that makes the other person wonder if they went too far. It makes them hesitate. And in that hesitation, you regain control. You withdraw your energy like a king who turns his back. Not in retreat, but in declaration. You're telling the room, this is beneath me. You won't get a show. You won't get validation. You won't even get attention. What you'll get is absence, cold, clean, surgical absence. And suddenly, they're not in control of the moment anymore. You are. Because here's what most people miss. Disrespect only grows where it's fed. When it gets a laugh, a defense, a nervous smile, it expands. But when it's met with stillness, an unflinching gaze, a calm pause, a slow blink, it shrinks under its own weight. It reveals itself not as dominance, but as desperation. And the one who stays calm while others try to provoke becomes the person the room starts watching. Not out of curiosity, but out of caution. That's your first win. Not dominance. Not revenge. But uncertainty. You want them to start second-guessing themselves. To replay the moment in their mind and wonder, did I just make a mistake? Because that doubt doesn't just infect the disrespectful. It infects the whole group. It changes how they speak around you, how they look at you, how they define you. And in Machiavelli's world, perception is everything. It's not who you are. It's who they believe you are that controls the game. But what comes next is even more important. Most people can hold their frame for one moment. One scene. One confrontation. But Machiavellian control isn't built on one display of power. It's built on consistency. Because once you've signaled you're not to be crossed, the real test begins. They'll try again, quieter this time. More subtle. A backhanded compliment. A small exclusion. A passive-aggressive comment dressed as advice. And here, you do not return to normal. You escalate, but not in volume, in precision. You reframe the relationship completely. The warmth you once offered is now gone. The door they once walked through freely is now closed. You don't announce the change. You embody it. In your tone, in your timing, in your refusal to return to who you were before the line was crossed. Machiavelli knew this. If you punish once but then forgive too quickly, the enemy returns with a sharper knife. But if you punish and then vanish, if you punish and never soften, their fear lingers longer than any insult could. And this fear, not of you, but of your silence, is what builds your name. People start to speak differently around you. They hesitate before using your name in jokes. They double-check before interrupting. Not because you demanded respect, but because they've seen what happens when it's withdrawn. You didn't shout. You didn't threaten. You didn't lecture. You simply made one thing clear. You are no longer accessible. And that brings us to the next law. Not all disrespect deserves a reaction, but every act of disrespect deserves a response. The difference? A reaction is emotional. A response is strategic. You may not respond today. You may not respond at all. But when you do, it's not to match their pettiness. It's to turn their disrespect into their exposure. You don't insult back. You don't play their game. You change the setting of the game itself. If they mocked you in front of others, you don't retaliate with a joke. You respond with presence. They make a snide remark. You look at them, then speak to someone else. They interrupt. You let them talk, then continue as if nothing was said. They exclude you from a decision. You make the next move without their input. Not to hurt them, but to remind them and everyone watching that you're not just still in the room. You now own the floor they stand on. You see, most people think power means being louder. But Machiavelli knew better. True power is not about volume, it's about weight. And nothing carries more weight than the person who does not flinch when crossed. The one who does not plead, who does not defend, who does not chase. That person becomes an anomaly. And anomalies are dangerous. Because they break patterns. And humans fear what they cannot predict. You want to become that anomaly. When someone disrespects you, most expect retaliation or submission. They're ready for your anger. They're ready for your silence. What they're not ready for is surgical calm. A response so composed, so void of emotional fuel, it makes them question everything. That's the Machiavellian art of reversal, not by fighting their attack, but by making it turn inward. You don't defend yourself. You let them reveal themselves. And then you hold up the mirror. A simple question, softly spoken, is often more destructive than an insult shouted in rage. Did you mean that as a joke? Would you repeat that if someone else was listening? That's a strong comment. Want to stand by it? No threats. No tone. Just precision. Because now they have to decide, was it really a joke, or were they trying to test you? Was it really harmless, or was it calculated? And even worse, for them, now everyone is watching. They don't get to hide in the comfort of their snide tone or flippant language. You've dragged their move into the light. And most people, once seen clearly, start to shrink. But here's the critical insight Machiavelli would want you to understand. Most people don't disrespect you to dominate you. They do it to see if they can. And once they realize they can't, they don't become enemies. They become cautious. That caution is your advantage. Because when people have to think before they speak around you, you've already shifted the room. You've stopped playing the game and started directing it. But the game never ends. It evolves. The next time they test you, it will be quieter. The comment will be indirect. The tone will be playful. The crowd smaller. This is where most people fail. They drop their guard. They convince themselves it's safe again. That maybe it wasn't disrespect after all. That maybe they were being too sensitive before. But Machiavelli would laugh at this. Because to him, there is no such thing as overreacting to a test of boundaries. There is only responding in a way that ends the test permanently. That's where the next move comes in, disproportionate consequence. Not revenge. Not drama. But deliberate, cold imbalance. Because if you respond with equal force, it's forgettable. But when you respond with more silence than expected, more distance than warranted, more removal than seems necessary, it sends a deeper message. You're not emotional. You're done. And that, more than anything, terrifies people. Not that you're angry. Not that you'll yell. But that you'll disappear. That you'll no longer offer access, warmth, or even acknowledgement. That's the cost they now pay, not your wrath, but your absence. This is how power solidifies. Not through one confrontation, but through your ability to remain unshaken after it. Because everyone is watching. Not just the disrespectful one. But the audience, the quiet ones, the influential ones, the opportunists, watching for the moment you either collapse or calcify. Watching to see if your boundaries are self-imposed or crowd-dependent. And once they see that you hold frame under pressure, you move up in their mental hierarchy. Now they start to think twice before interrupting. They filter their words. They bring you into the conversation more carefully. You've become someone who sets the tone, not someone who adjusts to it. This is the real shift. You're no longer defending your respect. You are defining it. But here's where the strategy sharpens even further. Some people won't back down. Not because they're bold, but because they're broken. Their power comes from destabilizing others. They thrive on seeing people fumble, overreact, or get defensive. To them, provoking people is sport. And when they sense your strength, they don't retreat. They escalate. And that's your cue to change levels. You don't escalate emotionally. You escalate socially. If they make another comment, you don't reply to them, you reply to the room. If they try to reclaim your attention, you don't give them rejection, you give them vacancy. You don't react to their energy. You dissolve it. That's what unnerves them. They're not met with opposition. They're met with erasure. And when they realize that you're not trying to win, they are just no longer relevant, that's when their confidence collapses. Because here's a truth Machiavelli embedded in every page he wrote. Nothing is more destabilizing to a manipulator than realizing they're being watched. That their tricks aren't landing. That they're performing to an audience that has already dismissed them. You become the person who never raises their voice, yet makes others lower theirs. But we haven't yet reached the apex. Because there's a level beyond silence, beyond strategic consequence. A level that doesn't just respond to disrespect, but transforms it into influence. Machiavelli knew that power is not preserved by reacting to every slight. It's preserved by making people unsure of your limits. You want to create an atmosphere around you. One where people hesitate before speaking. Not because they fear you, but because they don't fully understand you. You become unreadable. Predictability is vulnerability. When people know what will offend you, what you'll say, how you'll respond, they can manipulate. But when you're controlled, detached, and measured, you become harder to pin down. And the mind protects itself from what it doesn't fully understand. This is why unpredictability creates respect. So from now on, your goal is not to prove anything. It's to become a question mark in their mind. Why is he so quiet? What is she thinking? Why didn't they laugh? What do they know? That curiosity builds discomfort. That discomfort builds caution. And caution builds respect. Far more than likability ever could. You don't dominate by explaining yourself. You dominate by becoming someone others instinctively defer to. Not out of submission, but self-preservation. You want people to feel the change when you enter a room. The air thickens. Voices drop slightly. Posture adjusts. People remember what they said last time they were around you. That's not fear. That's presence. And presence doesn't come from noise. It comes from mystery wrapped in consistency. You're not a reactor anymore. You're a presence. But here's where the psychology turns even sharper. Because most people walk through life thinking respect is earned by being kind. That if they show patience, empathy, and forgiveness, people will admire them. And while those qualities are valuable, Machiavelli would argue, respect isn't earned by being nice. It's earned by being felt. What does that mean? It means you don't need to win arguments. You need to shift energy. When you enter a room and people become more aware of themselves, when they edit their tone, when they pause before interrupting, that's not popularity. That's power. That's the invisible hierarchy being recalibrated around your presence. And this doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from discipline. You speak when you choose. You engage when you want. You don't overshare. You don't seek approval. And when someone crosses your boundary, they don't just get a reaction, they get removed. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. Because here's the Machiavellian truth people don't want to hear. Disrespect doesn't destroy power. Your reaction to it does. And the one who can remain emotionally still in the presence of an attack isn't just strong, they're untouchable. You don't need to be loved. You need to be understood as someone who cannot be crossed twice. That's the threshold you now operate from. And once that standard is set, something strange begins to happen. People start bringing your name into rooms you're not even in. They warn others. They speak of you not with gossip, but with calculated respect. You become a reference point. A silent warning. A known quantity in a world of emotional chaos. But the final twist is this: you don't chase that reputation. You let others build it for you. Because every time you handle disrespect with discipline, Every time you respond without noise but with withdrawal, you train the world how to treat you. And they adjust. Not because you demanded it, but because you never tolerated less. You don't need to be louder. You need to be felt. And those who are felt don't need to defend themselves. But what happens when the disrespecter realizes they made a mistake? When their joke didn't land? When their subtle jab backfired? When your silence didn't signal submission, but separation? They'll come back. They always do. Not with an apology. Not at first. But with casual questions, light laughter, just checking in, or pretending it never happened. But because they're probing. Not for forgiveness, but for access. They want to know, is the door still cracked open? Can they get back in? Is your attention still available? This is your moment of supreme power. And Machiavelli would insist, this is not where you punish. This is not where you forgive. This is where you redefine. You don't need to scold them. You don't need to cold shoulder them dramatically. You simply remain unchanged. No extra warmth. No softened gaze. No attempt to ease the tension. They step forward. You stay still. Because the most chilling message is not, you hurt me, it's, you no longer matter. And when someone who once had access to your energy realizes they've become irrelevant to it, it does something no confrontation ever could. It makes them feel the weight of your absence. You haven't just enforced a boundary. You've created a new reality and left them outside of it. And this is where most people fail. They want to go back. They want closure. They want to be the bigger person. But Machiavelli wasn't interested in being admired for morality. He was interested in being respected for control, for principle, for effectiveness. And effectiveness means, you don't reopen the gate once it's been closed. Not because of bitterness, but because of identity. Once someone crosses your line, they've revealed something about themselves, and you. They've shown you what they're capable of. And you've shown yourself what you'll no longer allow. To return to normal is to betray yourself. And in Machiavellian terms, there's no greater act of self-sabotage. But here's what's even more important. How you handle one moment of disrespect teaches everyone around you how to approach you forever. This is your reputation test. Because in the aftermath, people are watching. They're not just seeing how you dealt with the person who crossed you. They're studying how you move now. Are you soft again? Did you fold? Did you smile when you should have stayed silent? Or did you remain exactly who you became when the line was crossed? If you hold that frame, if you maintain your standard, you become a certainty in a world of inconsistency. And certainty is rare. People trust it. They move around it. They talk about it. But this certainty is not about coldness. It's about selectivity. You're not hostile. You're simply no longer available to those who violate what you protect. And the more you enforce that rule, the more the world adapts. Conversations change. Invitations become more careful. Your presence is sought out, but not taken lightly. You don't chase inclusion. You become the one people need to include, or risk losing the room. This is how your silence becomes your sword. Not by attacking anyone, but by creating such a powerful absence that others begin managing their behavior without you having to say a word. You don't demand respect. You make disrespect too expensive. And the cost? Is not your anger. It's your distance. That's the new economy of power. There's something people don't realize about silence. It's not emptiness. It's not surrender. It's not weakness. In the hands of the undisciplined, yes, it's avoidance. But in the hands of someone like you, someone who understands power, it becomes a weapon sharper than words. Machiavelli would say, the one who controls their silence controls the narrative. Because silence doesn't just pause a conversation, it redirects it. When someone disrespects you and you don't react, they start reacting to their own behavior. They begin reviewing, second-guessing, overthinking. Your lack of response becomes the stage they perform their insecurity on. And what's more powerful than making someone reveal their weakness without saying a word? That's psychological warfare without ever raising your voice. But silence alone isn't enough. It must be paired with unavailability. The modern world has confused access with connection. People assume they can speak to you however they want, and still have the privilege of your attention. Machiavelli would dismantle that idea entirely. He'd tell you, access to you is currency. And the moment someone disrespects you, they're in debt. Whether they know it or not. Your presence, your warmth, your time, they now owe for what they tried to take for free. So don't rush to restore connection. Don't reward nice behavior after a moment of disrespect. That's not redemption. That's manipulation. Instead, enforce the debt. Not through hostility, but through distance. You show up less. You speak less. You remove your energy like royalty stepping back into the shadows, still present, still watching, but no longer reachable. And this shift? It doesn't go unnoticed. It creates ripple effects. The person who once disrespected you? They'll try harder. They'll joke, flatter, try to win back your smile. But your neutrality stays fixed. Others will start picking up the new tone. They'll talk about you with more precision, more reverence. Not because you did anything extreme, but because you refused to drop your standard. This is Machiavellian elegance. Because it's not enough to punish the behavior. You must recalibrate the field. You must ensure that everyone who witnessed the moment, whether directly or indirectly, walks away with one clear conclusion. You do not cross that person and expect to stay the same. They'll forget what was said. They'll forget who laughed. But they won't forget how cold the room became when you didn't flinch. You've changed your gravity. Now you don't just have boundaries, you are a boundary. Your name becomes synonymous with discipline, with presence, with precision. And here's the key, you didn't ask for any of it. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't lecture. You didn't plead. You simply chose yourself. And that choice, repeated, reinforced, remembered, is how Machiavellian respect is born.